Being 7:30, I call this meeting of the Board of the Commissioners of the Reading Municipal Light to order. You wonder what I was going to do with this thing. Okay, let me read the, this meeting is being recorded. It held remotely on Zoom and will be live streamed on RCTV. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair. All items on all items of the official agenda. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. It is the role of the chair to maintain all public comment or ensuing discussions. If anybody's going to participate remotely, we ask that they state their name. I don't think there is anybody remotely on the RCT at this point. So, is Bob?
Yep.
Bob in?
Yep. Bob Bolter's remote. Bill.
So please state your name and address.
It's Bob Bolter, 91 Arcadia Ave, Reading.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All votes now will, because we have a remote participant, will be taken by roll call at this point. So with that, I don't know if there's any public comment. Karen, you want to say anything?
Hello. Karen, I need to do this part.
Is she audible on this meeting?
Yeah, can
She's standing there.
Come closer, come
you come forward to the
forward.
microphone?
This one's live.
Okay, I'm Karen Herrick, the Reading Select Board. Wonderful to see you all again for the second time this week. Congratulations, Pam. Welcome and thank you for offering to serve. I know you aren't meeting till September, so I did want to come by and say that I appreciate the support that you have given to the Killam School Building Committee already, which is a very important project in Reading and will help us with our green building program. And I also wanted to give you a heads up, since you said yes, we came back for more. The Conservation Commission owns Matera Cabin up on North 28 in Reading. We are building a pavilion up, or they are building a pavilion up there. They're trying to make it sort of a learning center. They would love to talk if you're interested in a public outreach project and kind of a demo project for solar panels. They'd love to talk to you about potentially making this pavilion covered with solar panels. The pavilion supports the community garden, which is located there. The community garden has a pretty big section which supports our local food pantry. It's a great PR opportunity, and I'd be happy to follow up with anybody if that's within your bandwidth. So, thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Don't see any of the public comments. So first, I would like to welcome our newest member, Pam Daskalakis. Being the unofficial historian of the commission, I want you to know you're the 63rd commissioner in all time on this.
All time.
All time, 63rd all-time commissioner. You actually are occupying a seat that was created in the charter reform of 1987. You are the 6th person to sit in that chair. Barry Hampson was the first. It actually in the charter, that charter changed the board membership from 3 members to 5 members. So you are the 6th person to sit in that chair. So, okay. Everybody else goes. 3 of the commissioners go back to I think 1987, and I'm also from 1987 also. So, unofficial historian. So very good, and we welcome you.
Thank you.
You want to say anything, or?
Just very glad to be here and excited to get started. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Very good. Okay, let's move to the minutes. Do I have a motion that's in the agenda?
I'll second.
Somebody needs to read the motion.
And I'll move. I just lost the page here. Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the January 5, 2023, January 13, 2023, and January 18, 2023 open session meetings as presented on the recommendation of the General Manager and the Board Secretary.
Okay, is that seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Further discussion? There being none, has to be a roll call vote. So, Mr. Talbot?
Talbot, aye.
Ms. Beda?
Marlene be I.
You need to abstain since you were not here. Okay, and then Mr. Coulter? Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Aye, and then Ms. Pacino, aye.
Aye. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we heard you. You got you. Okay. The next item will be the Reading Town Charter Review Committee appointment at this point. So there is an attachment. So the town charter, from what I understand, has to be reviewed every 10 years. So they're looking to form a committee. And under the charter, there has to be representatives from this commission at this point. So they're looking to meet, I believe, in September for the first time. I can tell you that I would like to serve on that. It's okay, everybody. I served on the last charter review 10 years ago. Also being a former chair of finance, the FinCom, and the former chair of the bylaw committee, I'm probably the most qualified person to be on that committee. So, but that's up to everybody else what they want to do on that. So
You need two members on it or
just one, it's only one member.
Okay.
What
I mean,
are
I'd
the,
love to help, but I don't have to
Yeah.
be officially on it.
what are the big questions that?
I don't know
other
what-
than,
I have no
We have
idea
to do
what they've got in mind. I can't imagine. I'm not aware of anything in the charter that really needs to be changed that I've heard of at this point.
Is there any discussion about changing Robert's rules and maybe moving to more of put a motion and then if there's discussion, based on the vote versus I know right now in our charter, it says you have Robert's rules, right? So you have to debate before you vote. I know there was a bunch of people have wanted to vote before you debate because it could speed up town meeting. I don't know if that is would be part of that review, Phil.
Karen, you want to come up?
Karen Herrick, Reading.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
We did talk about this week at our select board meeting. So things have changed since it was 10 years ago, and I appreciate you stepping up again. That'll be great. And so I know town council has some updates for this committee about things that other communities are doing to update things. I do believe there are lots of pronoun issues, lots of select men issues as opposed to select board issues. But beyond that, I think there'll be a discussion. We got in the packet this week of the select board is quite a lengthy memo on the options for getting through this. And so I think the committee then, the whole charter will be up for review so people can propose things. And then depending on the substance of the change, it's more effort or less effort to get it, or more time to get it approved. I think that's a great question.
Okay. All right. So, does somebody want to make a motion to appoint me?
Yeah.
Also move.
Okay, so the motion was move the RMLD Board of Commissioners appoint myself, Philip Casino, to serve as ex officio capacity on the Town of Reading Charter Review Committee.
Second.
Okay. Pam seconded. So further discussion? Roll call vote again. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Beta?
Aye.
Ms. Dastalastis?
Aye.
Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Ms. Pacino, aye. Okay.
I just have a question about the timeline of the review. Is it there's a final date when it has to be reviewed by?
Well,
Just
I
curious.
think, and maybe Karen may correct me, but I believe they're looking to do in September for potentially sending it to the November town meeting. Do I have that right?
There's a deadline. I forget what it is.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
definitely dates.
Yeah,
Curious.
I can look it up. I got the memo in my email. It's in the email. I can look
Great,
that
yeah.
up. Okay, so why don't we move on to the integrated resources at this point? So Bill, you're gonna give us a setup, Greg, and are we gonna go straight to Bill?
Straight to Bill.
Straight to Bill.
Thank you. So we've got a couple of motions to discuss today. The first, you keep this one up there. Yep. We'll go with the battery storage. So we sent out a request for information to several developers and battery providers about 2 months ago. We evaluated those offers and compared them, and I want to tell you a little bit about the battery project. So just so you know, it describes the benefits of the battery. So as you may know, we pay a couple of bills to ISO every month. One is for generation and capacity, so it's essentially a capacity charge that is paid into the market to recompense the people who own generation capacity to participate in the market. So we need them to be there so that we have a functioning market, and they do that by charging all load serving entities on the system. So for 2023 to 2024, the amount of that charge, the capacity charge, is $2 per kilowatt month. So that means for every kilowatt we import from ISO New England, we pay $2 into the system, and then that money is then paid to the generators that are participating in the forward capacity market. And then looking at the value chain, the next step is from the power plants, you go to the transmission system where they move the power from the power plants to the distribution networks like RMLD. So the transmission owners also need to be compensated for their participation in the market. So their ISO New England charges all of the load serving entities for the amount of power they're using on what, as they refer to, the regional network services. So this is Schedule 9. For 2023, the rate is $11.75 per kilowatt month. So you can see it's significantly higher currently. It hasn't always been that way. It used to be the other way around, where capacity costs more than transmission, but we've come to a point on the network where we're paying a lot more for transmission capacity than we are for capacity. And we have learned recently that the transmission cost will increase by about 8.5% next year. And we expect it to continue to increase. And that means that finding a way to lower these costs is important. So one of the ways we can do that is by putting on our distribution system a grid scale battery. So we would dispatch that battery during peak times so that we lower the metered import into our service territory, and that will have a direct benefit by reducing the transmission charge by $11.75 every month for every kilowatt that we reduce the import by. So directly proportional to the output of the battery if we hit the peak. So that is sort of the immediate economic justification to putting a battery on. That's why they're so economically viable at this point. But they also, have the benefit of being able to store energy. So on a system where you can't, a commodity that you can't store, having battery storage is helpful for other reasons, like when renewables are generating and they're beyond your load, then you can store and use it for later. But right now, the use case is in reducing our transmission capacity charges. So just the battery energy storage systems that we've evaluated is lithium-ion technology. This is very commercially advanced. They're in cars, they're in laptops, cell phones. So it's a very commonly accepted technology. We're looking at 5 megawatt, 15 megawatt hour storage. So it's a 3-hour storage period. We are looking at 4 locations on our system. And we're going to interconnect 2 of them at one of our existing substations where we currently have a 5 megawatt battery and a 2.5 megawatt natural gas generator. So this will be in addition to those resources. And then we will interconnect 2 more in other places in our system. So we don't have those locations nailed down yet, but there are possibilities. We are building a new substation, substation 6, and we also are looking at different projects throughout our service territory to have more in-territory generation, and these could serve there as well. So the contract that we've settled on is a 15-year contract with a renewal option at the end of 15 years. The site will be returned to grade at the end of the contract. If we don't renew, it is a shared savings contract, so that means that we will be sharing the benefits of the battery with the developer. There will be no other cost to RMLD, so it'll be very low risk. There's no, and it's basically a pay for performance. If they do not hit the peak and create savings, then there's no payment made to the developer. They generate the payments we make to them by saving us money, and we give them one of every $2 that we save. The NPV of this of one 5 megawatt battery is 29 million over 15 years, and that's at a relatively conservative assumption about transmission and capacity costs. And so it's going to provide a per battery about $600,000 annually in savings to RMLD per battery. So it'll be about 2.4 million for all four.
Okay.
Okay. Just to give you some background on the selected vendor, we did have 10 respondents, so there was a lot of interest in this RFP. I think because we had so many of them, and so we selected Citizens Energy because they did provide us the greatest share of the savings with the lowest risk profile. And Citizens, was founded in 1979 by Joseph Kennedy II. It's now the managing director is Joseph Kennedy III. They've been traditionally focused on the energy needs of low-income citizens. They've developed provided oil to low-income citizens, among other things. And they've moved to start developing renewable energy and storage projects. So they currently have their track record. They have installed a 5 megawatt lithium-ion battery in Holyoke. That they're also a municipal light plant, very similar to this one. They have a 6.8 megawatt lithium-ion battery in the Philadelphia Naval Yard, and they also have 40 community solar projects across the country where they provide the output to those to low-income communities primarily. So that's the battery project. Any questions?
Yeah, so if I look at the picture here, it looks like looks like a trailer truck to me. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's containerized. So it does look very this isn't an exact picture, but it's representative.
So this is going to be parked on the street. It's going to be on a set.
No, there'll be pad mount. So we'll put down a concrete pad near the substation. It will be interconnected. Substation will be permanently there, for 15 years until it's time to remove it. But it is they are contained in a module. It's a weatherproof module, a very quiet and contained unit.
Okay, is substation 4 North Reading? Is that
Substation 3. 3
is North Reading. So which one is
Sorry.
4?
Sorry, that was a typo.
It should be substation 3.
It's
Okay.
substation 3.
And substation 3 right now has the existing 5 megawatt 2-hour system. So
I'll
it's,
tell you the story how we acquired that groups of property.
yeah, no, I'm walking through land stuff, so I want more detail, but that one's interesting.
Yeah.
The trading.
All right, exactly. Okay.
Just curious, when did the RFP go out?
It went out. It wasn't an RFP. It was because this is a services agreement.
It's power supply. So
We're not owning the battery, so we weren't doing a full RFP. We sent out an RFI and said we're looking for a performance.
Okay, RFI. Sorry.
Yeah.
When did the RFI go out?
It went out in May.
Okay, that's quick.
Phil, one question, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
But just a question about Citizens. If this is only their second commercial scale battery, the other vendors, how are they, that this is only the second time that they put one into play. That makes me a little bit nervous, right? Quite frankly, versus other vendors that were out there. So why did they get selected over the other vendors? And then the second follow-up is, if this on the when this battery is discharging, it's a peak battery discharge, are there any penalties if we do not discharge, if the battery is not ready to discharge during peak times, is there a penalty related back to ISO on the performance? Is there any type of a performance contract on the battery?
No, these will be behind the meter, so, ISO, we will let them know they're there, but they're not dispatching them, so we're not bidding these
Okay.
for capacity market. These are just there to shave our peak, and when they shave our peak, we receive the direct benefit of having our transmission and capacity costs reduced, during the hour that they discharge.
Okay, that's correct. That's a good contract. But
We get charged the same amount we would have if the battery wasn't there.
No savings.
And there's no savings and there's no payment to the developer, to citizens.
Phil, Bob, these are load reducers. So behind the meter load reducers only, not big G generators. So no penalty if we don't.
And
okay,
the question of experience, yes, battery, this is commercially available, but there are very few batteries that developers have developed on sites. There's a lot of activity right now, but I think if you look at any of the major developers, they only have a few operating projects under their operation. So we do think it's a relatively simple thing to operate and install. We understand the technology. So we felt that the operational risk and technical risk was relatively low. But execution is important.
And Bob, the other element is we're plugging it into, so we learned quite a bit first time around when we did the existing system and the subsequent dispatches. And our engineering guys are part of the interconnect study. They're part of the interconnect program. So, and it's going to substation 3, and we're actually configured already in substation 3 to add another battery system. It'll be in a little different location than we originally planned, but technical risk is low, and the modules themselves are commercial, they're not specific to citizens.
okay. And who carries the insurance on the battery itself?
That would be the developer.
Citizen.
If in case the developer does. Okay.
I mean, we'll tell our insurance company that the battery's there, but yeah, the insuring the battery will be on them.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
One more.
Other question, when is their commitment to installing the battery?
Well, they say, depending on when we sign the
Sure.
agreement, we think we can install it by the end of 2024.
End of 2024.
Yeah.
So that'll be in the contract. You must have this battery sitting on the pad and discharging and charging by.
Yeah, there'll be a penalty if it's not.
Okay.
Started.
We
haven't, but we don't have.
Oh, you don't have it figured out yet.
Well, no, but we're not putting any, short of doing some site prep, which we're doing, which is part of it. Most of it's already done. We're not putting any cash in.
No, I know.
Yeah. So, we've got a draft. I've got to take a look at it with you, but I don't know. I don't think there's any significant penalties for them not to perform. It's a missed opportunity for us. Unlike, us paying for something. We're paying
Sure.
for savings only. So
Understood. We're not putting cash out.
Yeah.
Just going back to Bob's point about all these players being new.
Yeah.
That this is the company, we expect them to have the thing on the ground in late 2024. How do we know they're going to perform? And what if they don't? And do they have to pay up? Is there a performance bond if they don't have it sitting on the pad by?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing with performance bonds. Like if you impose a performance bond, we'll end up paying for it at the end of the day. So that the performance bond wasn't necessarily in their initial
Okay.
offer.
Just looking for,
no, you
want to have it there working. Yeah. Right.
Well, and I think you're right, because ideally we want this thing to be operational January of 2025.
Mhm.
Right. And so we're trying to keep the ball moving forward quickly now. And there's a lot of intermediate steps and milestone steps, et cetera. The good news on the first one in terms of being in the substation, in terms of approvals from the town, they're pretty minimal because we have site control and we already have a system there. But one thing I was going to mention, one of the things that we spent a little more time on last time around was just working with the North Reading Fire Department. the good news is we've got a configuration with them on the existing system, so we're gonna basically replicate that and let them know what we're doing as well. That's probably a key piece, but Conservation Commission, all the other stuff will do like permits, but it's in our substation for the first one. The second one is a little bit more involved. We have plans for it to be at substation 6, but substation 6 is not going to be, at the end of the day, it's not going to be ready to accept the battery system until after the substation is built, which is at the end of 2025. So we're, one of the things that Bill mentioned is other locations to put it, including, potentially, and I'll give you a little update at the very end on Maple Meadows, but potentially Maple Meadows as well. So, and that's what we're trying to, that we would have site control theoretically before in a next spring, such that we could put it there. So that's the key question on the second system, the second pair, which is another 10 megawatts, is going to be where we put it. And so we're hustling to find land, like really hustling to find land. So, but anyway, we want it to be a place.
Can I ask a couple questions? So the battery that's in Holyoke, is that a similar shared savings? Do we know?
I believe they did do a shared savings arrangement
Okay.
there.
Any
No,
feedback
the
from
Holyoke
citizens?
reports that it has operated well. It was like one of the first batteries used in that configuration, and it's delivered them, value. So they're happy with it, and they did. I think they have another battery project being installed now.
And you mentioned the 4, so is it in 3 hours per? Is it 3 hours in total across the 4, or is it 3 times 4?
Each one will have 3 hours, and we will probably dispatch them all at the same time because we're trying to hit the same peak.
Got it.
Big beat an hour.
Yeah,
The
Right.
window trying to hit an hour.
but none of them can dispatch more than 5 megawatts. This is a rule of the ISO. In order to be considered behind the meter, the asset has to be less than 5 megawatts.
Is there a cap on the savings that they would get? Or, if we go over a certain point, do they always get 50%? Or
They always get 50. So even if, like, say the market goes up higher, they'll get 50% of the savings, but we will also get 50% of the savings. So it is, I mean,
sure.
we get the full savings, but then we pay them for half of it.
And it says in the presentation, net savings of 600,000 after year 1.
Yeah, so year 1 is different because of the way the capacity market works. Like you hit the capacity for the annual peak, so that usually happens in the summer, and so they don't apply that until the following year.
Got it.
So in the first year, you don't see as much savings because you haven't hit a capacity peak yet, and then in that first year of operation, the capacity savings moves to the second year. So in the 15-year contract, you will owe them a payment in the 16th year for the savings in the capacity market for the 15th year. So you're always 1 year behind in the capacity market.
And so it's a 15-year contract, is there any performance term in there if they aren't performing or the batteries aren't performing where we can cancel?
Well,
a different provider?
yeah, I mean, at some point it will be, if they're not generating any savings, it's going to create a problem.
Mhm.
So there will be, termination language in there if they're for non-performance. Because, and really at that point, they probably won't want to keep the battery if it's not able to hit any peaks. And yeah.
Go ahead.
You might have already said this. So what would this cost us to buy and have installed?
It would be about $1 million a megawatt to install a battery. So for if we were looking at 20 megawatts, it'd be around 20 million. So it's it would be quite an investment to put in on our own. And with the situation, and so the debt payments on that, if you look at the debt payments, and this is so commercial that we would probably not be able to get a lot of grant money in order to do something like this. So we felt like the best option and the lowest cost option was to not put our own capital in it, because we do have other projects that we're looking at that are more complex and probably, it's better for us to lead them and to outsource this one to a developer who has the experience and that is comfortable taking more risk, has a greater risk profile than we do. So that we can focus on other things.
May I add one more just strategically. So relative to storage assets, the strategy we have right now is not to own the assets. For generation assets, such as the solar arrays we're trying to do, to own those assets. In both cases, we are eligible for a bunch of grants, but also the 30% ITC. But from a technology development on the storage system, we think the technology and the price curves are still relatively volatile. We're actually exploring non-lithium ion alternatives as well, to do some pilot projects as well. So there's and a whole bunch of different storage technologies. So our strategy is not to put our capital into storage, but to put it into generation and AMI and all the other stuff. And you're about to find out substation. So that's the big. So of all things Bill mentioned, but the core piece is strategic risk, technical risk from a strategy perspective.
Okay.
Helpful.
You alluded to during the CABB, this is somehow connected with potentially Mystic, the Mystic plant.
Yes. So the economics of this program are peak shaving, like our existing system. But what we have also configured this, or what we will end up configuring the system to do, is to do. So I'll back. So the capability is that we have the ability to discharge the battery. It'll be part of the contract. Where in situations where ISO New England calls us to do mandatory load reduction. So mandatory load reduction is not something that ISO has done ever recently. They do voluntary load reduction, and they do it in situations where they don't have enough capacity in the network to handle the load. As Mystic goes, so Mystic is about a little over a megawatt, 1.3 1300 megawatt. 1300 megawatt generation system in Everett, adjacent to the Encore. It is an older plant. It is a natural gas. It's a natural gas plant, and Constellation, who owns it, is officially going to completely unplug it, completely decommission it, starting in May of 2024. Adjacent to it is the Everett Marine Terminal, which is primarily a LNG terminal, and in the winter time, roughly a half a dozen LNG tankers discharge into that. It's not a significant piece of the flows required for the natural gas network, but it does help with pressurization on the backside, because it's at the very end of the line. Anyways, all said and done, with the elimination of Mystic, which is given, and the potential removal of the Everett Marine Terminal from LNG, if we end up in situations, and again, this is not doom and gloom, we're not making any statements, we're just being prepared, that there is a increased possibility, although very remote, that ISO New England in January or February, and 5 or 6 or 7 extended days of sub 10 degree temperatures, which we haven't seen in a while. But under those conditions, they might be in a situation where they ask for mandatory load reduction. What they typically would do is they'd start with 10%, and then they would do 5% incremental increases of load reduction until they got the system to balance. We right now have we have a 2.5 megawatt natural gas generator. Natural gas, if there's a shortage of natural gas, we'll be hard pressed to run that anyways. But we also have our little 5 megawatt system. But the idea would be that we would use this additional 20 megawatts over the 3-hour period, because they'd probably do it somewhere between 3 and 6 hours, depending upon the situation. But we basically use that battery to do load reduction instead of doing the only other thing we could do, and that is basically turn circuits off or turn customers off. Our charter is reliable, low cost, non-carbon, first word being reliable. We need to keep the lights on. So again, not part of the economic model, but part of the capability that we're building in is the ability, and we've worked through ISO New England to make sure that they're happy with what we want to do, and technically we're setting out this way, but basically to discharge it during, if ISO New England does a mandatory load reduction, it would probably handle our first payment on the time, our 10 or 15% of load reduction. So we would meet ISO's obligation by discharging during that period of time. So as far as they're concerned on the transmission network, they would see load reduction, and we would basically not have to turn anybody off. That requires planning, et cetera. Mandatory load reductions typically, it's at the tail end. It's after several days of cold, so it's not like it's going to be, hey, you got to do it fast. The reason I mention that is that state of charge of batteries, we don't typically leave the batteries at 100% state of charge unless we know that we're going to discharge it within a certain period of time. So if it's a cold period, we would basically configure it such that we are charged. Because if there's nothing in the battery, there's nothing to discharge, there's no load reduction. So there's a bunch of pieces. But anyways, I hope that explains it. It is also intended to be a mechanism that we would use in case ISO New England does mandatory load reduction. And then at some point we'll have other generation in place that is dispatchable. And that's part of a longer strategic plan that we would do instead of, well, in addition to battery, but we're trying to, part of the reason, back to Dave's question and comment, it's unlikely that it's unlikely that ISO would do any mandatory load reduction before January of 2024, 2025. And there's nothing to say that they absolutely will, but it's more likely than, given that Mystic and potentially Ember will come offline. Make sense? Fascinating.
Yeah, we talked about the winter. Is it the same risk of that in the summer?
Not in the summer. And the reason there's not as much risk in the summer is that there's an excess or surplus of natural gas in the system in the summer. Natural gas is used it's used significantly for electricity generation, but it's also used primarily for home heating. Summertime, we're in a cooling mode. So we are pipeline constrained, which only is a constraint in the wintertime. 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 12 years from now, some period of time, it is possible that New England will become pipeline surplus from natural gas, but it's, we're a decade plus down the road in terms of when that happens. So we're in this transition mode. So, core thing about storage and batteries, the goal here is peak management. That's where the economics pays. That's why it pays for itself, and we can enter into a contract where we don't have to write the check. We don't want to write the check because there's technology risk that we don't take. Not that there's risk, but just, we'd rather put our capital elsewhere where the returns are more persuasive and the technology risk is lower.
So the risk of, or the opportunity for savings because of load balancing exists both in winter and summer, but it's just the risk of the manual or the mandatory.
Yeah, that's a second
load
benefit. It's not in our, it's in our planning. It's in our design. It's not in our economic analysis. But the other piece is the peak, the economic thing on peak shaving. There's 13 key hours, as Bill mentioned. So there's capacity is 1 hour for the whole year. It typically, we're summer peaking right now, so it's typically either in July or August, 1 hour for the entire whole year. What our load is during that 1 hour. So typically we'll take our existing battery and the new ones we put in, probably discharge 30 hours roughly to make sure we get that one, because even if you think you've got it, something could happen later on. So you don't really know until after the season's over. And then there's 1 hour every month for transmission. As Bill mentioned, transmission right now is increasing significantly and will continue to, given existing projects plus additional projects that are required to support all this renewable. One of the things about renewable in the region is it is by definition distributed. So it's going to be spread across much larger areas, which means more transmission lines and transmission systems, which is more dollars. And the way it works, your peak, and the way we pay for it, all of us, every MLP, every customer, and through their IOUs, is the peak hour each month for transmission, which is 12, plus the month peak for capacity, which is 13. So transmission is all year long, and capacity for right now is summer. It's and it's a zero sum game. So if we don't do these things, you know, I say zero sum game. Here's the total cost. And that's just the way the system works. It is designed to encourage people to reduce load. Those that are more aggressive, pay less. So we can't not. I mean, we could not act, but it's a good. This is a good. It's good to do. And yeah, you'll hear a little more in a few minutes when he talks about rates. They do a coincident peak, also encouraging customers to do load reduction just by doing load reduction. So a whole bunch of pieces, but it's big dollars. That transmission piece is $19 million in our budget out of a $110 million budget, and it's going to continue increasing. So it deserves a mention. Okay. Any other questions on?
Any further questions or comments? Does somebody want to read the motion?
You're looking at me?
Yep, I
You're
am.
looking at me?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're the second in command here.
Okay, so this is 6.
Yes.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, vote to accept the General Manager's recommendation to contract Citizens Energy under an energy services agreement for battery storage services connected to RMLD distribution network as part of RMLD's peak load reduction program.
Is that seconding?
Second.
Just for information, the Citizen Advisory Board was a 3-0 vote to approve this tonight.
Thank you.
So, okay. Further discussion? If none, I will call for a roll call. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Beta?
Aye.
Ms. Elastics?
I,
Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
And Ms. Pacino, aye. So that motion passes. Okay. Move on to the rates.
Thank you. So we also have a motion for 2 rates. We have an industrial coincident peak rate and an economic development rate that we're proposing. So first, the economic development rate is we wanted to structure an electric rate that would promote business growth in the communities, and we think it would do that by creating, jobs, expanding the tax base, increasing vibrancy, because when businesses expand, they help other businesses, and there's a ripple effect. And we also, obviously it would expand our growth and increase our load, which helps all of our customers by distributing our fixed costs over more kilowatt hours. So the development of the rate is we wanted to provide an introductory discount to companies that are looking to either locate in the service territory or to expand in the territory. And we did want to focus on larger loads that will have larger impacts for all of the ratepayers. And we wanted to provide a discounted line item. And the line item we focused on was the distribution line item. As we explained, the capacity and transmission costs are not really in our control, even if we're sort of controlling them with the batteries. But our distribution costs are, what it costs us to maintain and operate the system internally. It's where our fixed costs for RMLD go. So by discounting that rate and attracting more load, we felt that could be an incentive for a company looking at us versus other locations in the area or outside the area to locate here in the RMLD service territory. So we think it's just another sort of like a tax abatement. Once we get them here, they will be here, and then they'll move. It'll be a 1-year discount on their distribution charge, and then they will, they'll relocate. It will also allow them to get set up. So as they're standing up the business or standing up the operation, it can offset some of the lack of revenue they might have during that time because their operations are up to full speed. So our proposal is to apply a 80% discount to the distribution demand charge. We feel like putting that all in one category is something, because this is generally fixed. It's, it is included in the rate, and we have control over it. It's not one of the charges that changes from month to month. So by giving an 80% discount for the first year, we wanted to check how meaningful that would be to a customer. So for a customer that has a 317 kilowatt demand, which is right at the threshold, this would be a 16% discount for them. So it's meaningful. From this is your first year, electric costs will be lower, and that's on top of the fact that, you know, generally RMLD as a nonprofit community owned entity has lower rates than our, you know, investor owned I guess resident district. So we felt like that would provide an incentive for people to move here.
Why don't you- Before you go on to the next rate, why don't you open up the discussion on the first one? I think maybe best.
Oh, on the economic development rate?
Yeah, on the economic development.
Okay.
So I don't know if people have questions.
Sure.
Yeah,
If approved, when would this begin?
August 1st.
yeah.
And would the bill highlight it the way you've done it nicely in red discount 16, you know, would it be?
Yeah, we would definitely, well, you know, this will be a conversation with the new customer, so we definitely will have that conversation and they will elect to go on this rate. But you know, but yes, we will highlight it, definitely make sure they know that they're getting that.
We don't have colored choices, but we do have a note section in the left-hand column. So we'll have to run manual calculations on these. We'll put it in the note section so it's clear. And we'll probably, mostly it'll be key accounts. So we'll probably have the key account manager reach out to them too. But the goal here is to encourage, right? And again, this is half PR, it's half economic. It's, you know, trying to come to our territory for all the other good reasons. And this is just another.
And for existing businesses?
That grow.
If they expand.
Expand. Yeah, there's a minimum, you know, to walk through, but there's a minimum requirement in terms of growth. So we have some that are in the process of growing. We want to encourage them to stay here, as opposed to
Leaving?
Yeah. Like, not just, you know, like taking everything away. So,
Growth being load.
road growth, yeah. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, you know, we want, so it's in the towns, and most of this would be in Wilmington because that's where most of the industrial is, and then some, and also North Reading. It's not much industrial and commercial in Linfield. So the goal here is another piece to encourage them to stay here, but it's the load growth is from our perspective, but we want them to grow the only reason the load's going to grow if the business grows, right? More production. You know, there are some companies that are high energy users. New England's not known for low energy rates, but it has other benefits, being close proximity to Cambridge, Somerville, and the biotech doesn't use a lot of energy. Well, if they came up here, they would. That's another topic. but there are ones that do manufacturing stuff tend to be energy intensive. So we're trying to attract those higher load. And again, as Bill mentioned, you know, it's more kilowatt hour sales in all intents and purposes in the fixed base.
Could I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Are IOUs offering anything like this?
You know, I don't think so. I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Some MLPs are.
Yeah, some of the other LPs are. This is not a new concept. To refine it.
Go ahead, Dave.
How many MLPs offer something like this?
I know specifically that Braintree has got it in place.
Any others that we know of?
No, not that.
So just so I understand the table, if company A comes in and parks next to company B and they do similar things, how low, let's say they have the same load, how much less is company A going to be paying
So,
percentage wise than company B?
well, there's,
Is that it right there, 16% less?
yeah,
60% for the first year.
Okay, so now company B says, I've been here for 20 years and you're charging me 16% more than company A that just moved in. I mean, how does that play out how do they feel about it? And then they come in and they're going to look for this,
yeah, well, I'd say.
or
that
I'm going to move out.
Yeah, next year they're gonna be paying the same amount as you,
Well-
and they'll be they'll be helping carry more of the fixed cost burden.
That's the key piece.
Okay, so this,
Yeah, it's a net benefit for everybody.
okay, I think I missed a piece there, which I apologize. This is a temporary.
It's only 1 year. Yeah,
I
1 year.
apologize. I missed that important caveat.
Yeah, but equally importantly,
Yeah.
you know, they're basically contributing. Their incremental load is contributing to.
I get that.
Yeah, okay. Good.
I get that part. Yeah. So then I wonder, why does it have to be implemented as a rate as opposed to just some kind of financial incentive, or we'll put a battery in if you come in, or some other.
Because we think it's simpler to just have a rate and to put them on it when they get here, as opposed to negotiating one-on-one with multiple customers. If we can announce this to people and say, you can take advantage of our economic development rate if you move here.
There's a limitation in terms of what we because we are an MLP, there's limits in terms of what special programs we can do.
Right.
So there's a lot of limitations.
But
So this is a mechanism that allows, so I mean, we literally have to, we don't, as you know, right? DPU looks at the Massachusetts DPU looks at our stuff. We don't need to go with them for permission, but they'll look at this and, we don't need their permission to implement it, but if they don't like it, they'll come back and say you can't do it. But if we were to just do something special, we would be outside of our chapter 164 in terms of doing special things.
I understand that, but you're doing a special thing here. This is a special thing.
But it's a class of customers. So
It's classic customers, not an individual customer.
like we would make this available to any customer that meets this criteria, increasing load by 300 kilowatt. We don't care who they are.
Load
They
growth.
do-
How did it work in Brain? Just because we're only the second one, I mean, how did it work in
Yeah,
Braintree?
that's the way that we're kind of.
But I mean, how did it play out? That's what I mean.
Well,
So I know how to play that because I was part of that. So it got off to a very good start. Like it started in January, May, rolled it out in January. So the first 2 months it was very successful. The third month it was not successful, and the reason why the third month it was not successful is that the people that were doing the dispatches basically tripled the number of dispatches. So there were 1 week it was 3 back-to-back calls, and the customers that were participating in it, including the Braintree Mall as an example, or the South State Mall, they couldn't do that load reduction 3 just the way they were doing it. So the customers got fatigued. That was due to the vendor who was doing the forecast, and they were making the calls too quick. They had made some changes to their software program. So and it only went out to 15 customers. So the 3 key customers that were doing 0.5 megawatt load reductions couldn't do it anymore. And they said, no need to do it.
That's for the coincident peak rate, right?
So Greg, on this economic
Yeah. I'm sorry.
development rate, I'm sorry if you, on this economic development rate, so anybody who's increasing load, would they be open to this rate? So I'm increasing my service size. I'm going up from, 150 kVA to 300 kVA. That would qualify. So is it anybody increasing load qualifying for this new?
If there
Right.
is a minimum load increase, it's an increment. So if it puts them over 300, yes, you're right. It would open them up.
So you're using kVA, what are you using?
300 kW higher.
KW.
KW, 300 kW, because that's how we bill.
Okay. You're gonna use KW. All right. So that's pretty wide. So anybody who's gonna increase load at a location, it seemingly would be, you might have a lot of takers. A lot of people are expanding their businesses, and do you have any projection about how many customers you think you're going to get? Or I know attracting new, but there's so much growth going on. Do you think there's a lot of
Many-
internal?
We don't have an estimate for the number of customers that will take advantage of it, but we believe we can handle whatever a very high volume of customers to increase their load.
Back to your question, Dave. I'm sorry. So they had 2 key customers that actually expanded. One was a bakery that went from a little 10,000 square foot, massive load increase, and it's been very successful. And they had a 2-year program. Braintree has a 2-year economic development rate. So anyways, I know the customer. it was part of the economic drive for him to stay there. They also put natural gas generators to do peak shaving. Braintree kept all the savings tied to that instead of doing batteries, basically load reduction by turning natural gas generators on. But those were configured to be basically emergency generators for the customer, the bakery. So that was the benefit to them, to the bakery. So that's what Braintree was able to do in addition to the 2-year economic development rate. Anyways, it was a very nice success story.
I have two. I don't want to belabor it, but I do have two more quick questions. So if it's a 16% savings, as by law, we can only charge 8% over net plant or whatever. Does that mean we're losing money on this we're not losing money?
No, not losing.
Okay.
It's incremental load.
Okay.
So that's specifically why we went after the distribution demand charge and we didn't do EDC for a different reason, but we didn't do fuel and PPCT in this particular one because those are purely pass through. And if we did it on those two, we would be losing money. In this case, we're not.
Then the last question is for existing customers that you have all assiduously been trying to get them to reduce and do efficiency measures and cut the peak, but now you're going to give them now you're going to, they only get this discount if they increase by X amount. That kind of works against all the existing programs because it motivates them not to reduce load.
But I mean, what
To
it's
an
easier for
extent.
them to do is to waste energy, the 60%, or
I don't know.
to,
No, it's not.
to actually save energy and reduce, like
customer
implement
84 cents.
measures that save energy and reduce their
Okay.
cost and their energy use.
I hear you. No, I mean,
I'm just happy.
yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
If they were to just in order to get the discount, they spend 84 cents to get 16 cents or 84% to get the discount.
Okay.
Not quite because the customer charge is fixed.
I'll defer to you guys because you've been crunching these for however
Yeah,
long. But
this is,
I just,
No, but it's,
if only one municipal light plant has done it, and
Yeah.
I'm a little,
there's low risk. I mean, to us, at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
yeah, it is a 1 year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oops.
How would does the customer have to opt in to this? Do they have to
They have to.
register?
Yeah, so we'll
Okay.
try to do a communication plan, make sure people know. That's why calling it an economic development rate is helpful because it helps us get the word out and market it, and working with the economic development personnel in
Mhm.
the different towns. We can let them know about it so that they can also use that to promote.
And the state.
Yeah.
And if a customer, a business moves out and then a new customer moves in, but it's the same load, just a new account, is that new account eligible?
Yeah.
New
Okay.
business, yeah,
If that.
because you want to.
So it's not additional, it's really not additional load, it's just.
Yeah,
an
I mean,
incentive.
Yeah, but
You're-
if
you're
low,
right.
we would have
Yeah.
lost.
Right,
We
okay.
look at it that way, I think. If that new customer didn't move.
and I'm sorry, the last thing, is there a sunset on this? Is this only going to be in force for a few years or until we vote to get rid of it?
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, we
vote
can
to-
unplug it.
Yeah.
We can unplug it. And obviously because you guys, so we would ask you to unplug it, but again, we're trying to grow load.
I applaud your efforts to.
And just
Well,
trying to
that's
be out of the
it.
box. Yeah.
So basically what we're doing here is we're foregoing in this example, about $4,000 worth of revenue. That's what we're kind of doing that
In this little tiny example, yeah.
right.
Exactly.
My only comment on on this page is that I see the prompt discount number stayed the same. I don't know quite how that happened. It seemed that the
Oh.
prompt discount after the discount would go down.
It would go down.
It should because where the stars, so you guys know that table where the stars are is where the prompt payment discount applies to. So yeah, it shouldn't, that's. We should,
It was a fixed cost, yes.
I think it was a cut and paste.
Yeah.
So,
Even better, actually.
well, no, it's not. It wouldn't, it just,
For the
so that prompt payment is actually, it's in the Cogsdale system. It is linked specifically to those two. So if it's only $9.82, it's a 15% prompt payment discount. So it'd be 15% of 92 would be $15 roughly instead of $744. So that
For going $4,000. So
we're down to $3,500. We just double check the math. Anyways, all said and done,
so we're not really 16, maybe we're 15 or 14.
we don't want to push it. We don't want, so this is where all the balance is, back to, we can't cross subsidize customers. There's only so many levers we get to pull. This lever is the one lever we get to pull, and we don't want to over pull it. So the prompt payment discount will be less. That discount, so that net discount will be 13 or 14%, because the prompt payment discount won't be there, because it's literally calculated off of those two, customer charge and distribution demand charge, and so it'll be less, but it's still, we didn't say we got to be 16%. We said we got to do something that's meaningful. And we said, we ran a bunch of scenarios. It's got to be more than 10%, and not 20%. And so we're there's a combination of science and art here. So, but we this is about having, hey, we are in our discussion with mass development in particular. They said, hey, we know you guys are not the town, but this helps us bring more customers to you, because we're trying to attract customers, but they have people coming to them on a regular basis, and so does the town. So it's part of a bigger plan. Okay.
Any further discussion on this rate before we move on to the second? Okay, let's move on to the second one, since it's all one motion, so we'll cover this one, Joe.
Okay, so the second rate is the industrial coincident peak rate. We currently have a peak demand reduction program, which basically is assessed annually, and we provide credit to customers that have reduced their peak off of what we were expecting them to achieve. And the problem is there's a time lag between the behavior we want and the reward that the customer gets. So we're trying to correct that lag, and we're trying to encourage greater participation in that program as well. So we thought by creating a rate that automatically puts people on that program, it will automatically calculate the rate each month and provide the savings to them every month that they participate. So the idea is to really focus on the larger customers that do have more effect on coincident peak contributions, and deliver that actionable intelligence to them in real time. And what we would do is provide them a demand bill reduction based on their ability to reduce their peak when we're experiencing a peak. So we would let them know when a peak event was in the forecast. Typically we have a few days in advance of knowing a peak is going to occur, and then we would confirm it on the morning of that event. And then hopefully if they have motors they can turn down during the peak period, they'll be able to see a reduction in their demand, and therefore they would get a significant reduction in their bill the following month. So we think this will give them tools to better control. It's not for every customer, but it's for customers that do have significant demand peaks that are able to shift their operations to take advantage of the rate. So the what we were proposing is to apply a PPCT charge and a reduction in the PPCT charge based on the amount of demand that they reduce. This example gives, if we set the charge at $12, they would be able to get a 22% reduction. If we set it at $18, the average would be about a 6% reduction. And we felt like the 6% reduction was a better way to go. So setting a PPCT charge that was around the $18 mark. And of course, this gets adjusted every month based on what our actual capacity and transmission costs are. So we would give them a reduction in that rate that would bring their demand charge down. And these examples are for if a customer reduced their demand during coincident peak by 5% based on their usage. So we analyzed our top key accounts, and this would be the result if each of if they reduce their demand by 5%. So so that's it. what this also does is, I said it provides shorter time between the action and benefits received. And then it also, by reducing the peak, we're trying to, increase our utilization of the infrastructure. So we shift kilowatt hour demand off of the peak. That means they're probably going to use energy in an off-peak time. So it helps us reduce, lower the peak, and still have the same amount of sales to a customer. So it should lower costs for everybody. And we're trying to give them the majority of the benefit of doing that. So we're keeping 20% of the benefit and providing 80% of the savings that they're creating for them. And we feel like the other ratepayers will benefit from that 20% overall cost savings. So that's what we're trying to incentivize them to participate, but also share the benefits that they help create. So with that, and that's, as Greg was pointing out, Braintree did implement that. And that, there was significant participation, though some customers found it challenging to maintain the demand. And the key is, I think, finding those customers that can most benefit from it, and take advantage of it. It's just another tool in our, another arrow in our quiver to try to reduce the peak and try to help customers save money by helping to reduce costs for everybody.
Questions, comments?
This isn't an industrial question, but Karen Herrick had said recently that she hadn't received Shred the Peak. And she's right, I haven't either, for residential.
There was one a week ago.
Oh,
There was.
there's a lot in social media. Yeah, I think there were social media, like when we had one on July 6th, I think.
Yep, 6th of July.
I guess I didn't
And
notice.
then,
Oh, okay. You're not spending enough time on social media.
I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, maybe, and yeah, no, I think we need to try to
But I think I
wherever
was
we can.
getting emails or texts last year. Right.
emails. We'll check into that.
I did
Yeah,
get
there's-
the email. I did get the
You
two
get the
emails.
with
Okay.
the new graphic.
I don't know the new graphic. All I know is I couldn't go home until 8 o'clock.
We should have,
Is that what you do?
check the list.
You control the peak by staying at work.
Yes.
We'll check the list.
So-
Go ahead.
Right, so, email, text is opt-in, and so we're working, so anyway, so there's a whole bunch of requirements in terms of communication. Yeah, we're a different entity. Yeah. But I'll still check on it. Again, that's a good prompt for more communication, so we'll work with Julie on that when she's back, so.
All right. Question.
No, it's good.
So actually was related to communication. How much advance notice would a business get that there was a
We would give them as much as we could, but typically we get a weekly forecast, so typically we can see a peak forming. So we could give them that advance notice that we see the peak forming and then let them know. Sometimes it doesn't occur the way we expect it to. So we would let them know that the morning of, if it wasn't going to happen or if it was going to happen. So we try to give them notice and then let them know closer to the event if it actually was going to happen.
Peaks are typically late in the afternoon between 5 and 6 or 6 and 7. It's fine with the latest. Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
No, so quick question, it's a great concept, but execution is king. So when you get to this, realistically, how many customers are in this, do we have that are in this coincidental peak, opportunity? And then the communication that it takes for them to, tell their employees, hey, we're going to shut down these machines at, 4 o'clock to get this benefit for energy usage. It's a lot of work. And what would be the potential gain? The cost benefit analysis of this, really, if you're talking $5,000 or $10,000, it's that's really at the end of the day, is it worth it? And that's what I'd like to understand before we, put this rate, out and into the public. What's it targeting? What's the total volume? That communication is critical, because if you told someone, oh, I'm going to be peak, and I tell you to shut down your production, and then there's no peak, they might turn around and said, hey, I called employees off. I told them don't show up. I told them not come to work today because you told me I needed you to shut off those machines. So I just get a little bit worried about that level of communication and how quick it can occur and how accurate it will be. Who we calling, at each company, do we have account reps? Reading Light's not that big, and we might not have that many customers, but this is a very, communication intensive program. And what is our overall dollar value for this, and what would that be?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. We are focused on the largest accounts, the what we call the key accounts. And we do have most of them already they have access to their own meter data, so they can see what their usage is at any given time. They can access that through the Tangent AMP platform. And we do provide them with access to that. But we have very frequent communication with the facilities people at each of these places. And as you said, each of these, the beauty of having it set as a rate is that we can have those individual conversations with each of the key accounts. And we know which ones are probably the most likely to benefit from it. So we have already, analyzed them. And we can, have those individual conversations with them. And I'm not talking, there aren't hundreds of customers. There are, dozens of customers, a few dozen that we would highlight. So we feel like it's not a huge lift for us to engage those customers and to have that conversation. And then, of course, we'd make it available to any customer that would benefit from it. But we would focus on the ones that would contribute the most and therefore benefit the most.
Yeah, but what's ballpark? Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars, or is it? I guess that's that. What's the benefit to us for implementing this rate? Again, is it such a minute, incremental savings? Is it even worth it?
I pulled up the analysis. So I'm going to share that. Okay,
Yeah.
So that's a good question, Bob. We basically took the team ran analysis on the top 15 customers. Not every one of them can participate. Again, as you know, it's heavily dependent upon their load profile. But if 15 of the top, exclude our very top customer, if the rest of them participated, and there's some assumptions in terms of how much load drop they ended up doing, but the benefit to them, so the total savings could be $1 million, 800,000 to them, and 200,000 to us. So that's an annual estimate based on actual analysis of our top 15 customers. So just to give order of magnitude, if we put this in place, it's going to be somewhere between zero net benefit to $200,000 realistically to us. The customers anywhere from 0 to 800,000. Now your point's actually, you bring up a good point. This is, I won't call it pay for performance, but if they don't, this is meant to encourage a change of behavior. And you and I know intimately well, most customers, can't do significant behavior change, right? One example would be our rock crushing company, right? They've got conveyors that have a bunch of rocks on them, and they can turn those off. They can sit on the conveyors, no big deal. We have other customers that are doing the semiconductor manufacturing. They're not gonna turn their ovens off.
Mhm.
Period. I mean, this cost is rounding error. $10 million a year is rounding error to their cost structure. So we've got those two extremes. There are ones in here. I can't do it on a public event, but our top 15 customers, but just the analysis we ran, order of magnitude for them, if everybody participates, not everybody, but all the ones that look like they can, 800,000, $800,000 and $200,000 to us. So, so it's, if they don't participate, there's no change. But your point is, you're right. If they do participate and it's not the peak, that's part of our communication. So we we need to make sure we emphasize that, but we set it up so that there's no penalty. This is the carrot and the stick, right? This is purely carrot. It's not intended to be. I'm pardon the analogy, but you get the idea, right? If they don't,
it can't be punitive.
they could be self-penalized because they send everybody home and miss production or what. As an example.
Right.
You follow?
Right. Yeah, no, it just can't be a punitive type of rate and secondary. If it was going to result in $50,000 between why are we bothering? But $1 million for a couple for customers, that's significant. So yeah, that's thank you, Bill. Thank you. Great.
The team's been doing a lot of analysis on this to try and look at different options and different scenarios. It's not, and what levers we can pull, etc. It's not perfect, but Bill, I think the key point Bill mentioned is, unlike the peak, we've talked before, right? And Dave's prompted us, go back and look at your peak shaving program. How can you make it more effective? And one of the mechanisms here is to put a bigger carrot in front of them. And as Bill mentioned, they see it in next month's bill. Literally, like, hey, I remember doing that. And we're going to have to get them back. There's going to be a lot of communication because they have a platform that they can log on to and see their load, 15-minute delay. This is all not quite real time, but pretty damn close. And, here's the potential if you do it. And, at the end of the event, here's what happened. So, we had at one of the high schools, I could do that publicly, the facilities manager actually was very active in terms of managing the building management system, and so he thought it was a game. And I say a game, like it was a challenge for him. So we were sending checks in the range of $20,000 a year to the school the following year, but that individual was engaged because he thought it was interesting. He subsequently retired. The new one wasn't quite as engaged, so the program. The current peak management program doesn't have, we're going to do more communication. We've been doing new communication, but it doesn't have oomph. So, this is a bigger carrot, back to your point, Bob. And, Dave's been prompting us to try something different. So this is a little more complicated, but it's real time.
Well, as long as you're citing my name, I also like carrots. And why not? If there's a way, I know it's probably a hard problem, but if it was implemented across everybody somehow, someday, that we knew that when these notices come out, not only are we doing it for altruistic reasons or emissions reasons, but hey, I might get $5 today if I just turn the AC off at 3 o'clock and turn it back on at 5, with $10, because that's what 80% of the savings might be, or something. It's going to be a big number when you're paying 100x for your peak hour, right? Because that's the thing people don't often miss, is that your wholesale costs can go up. What's the worst it ever can be? 100 times more? The worst of the worst. 100 times your wholesale cost could be 100 times more.
Not only a small 50% of the cost structure.
But then if we manage to, all of us do a little bit and we get a couple bucks back, that would be nice. And people would also see it on their bill the next month. Yeah.
So maybe I think the suggestion is, why don't we, there'll be a similar concept of a carrot. And I think you're saying, hey, great, good start, but
it's great.
Be more aggressive.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying.
In terms of more customers, and I think that's good advice.
It wasn't criticism. It was like, I love it. Thank you for doing it, and whatever we can do to support you to do more of it. That works with the caveats Bob mentioned.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to read the motion?
Sure. Why not? So we're
Right.
okay. So we are
Rates of the six.
move that the Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, vote to accept the General Manager's recommendation to create the following MDPU rates effective for billings on or after August 1, 2023, the economic development rate, and the 308 industrial coincident peak rate as presented.
Small typo, that the first one is 307.
Okay, 307
Oh,
economic development rate and 308 industrial.
I will
constantly
accept
rate.
that as part of the main motion.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I
Second.
second it.
It's been moved, seconded for the discussion. Roll call vote, Mr. Talbot.
Aye.
Ms. Beedham.
Aye.
Ms. Dasalassic.
I,
Mr. Coulter.
Aye.
Mr. Sino, aye. The vote, I forgot to mention, the vote on that in the city ZAB was 3-0. On that. for that
Yes.
motion. All right. Into the big ticket item, I think, next.
Yeah, the big ticket item.
This is a big ticket item.
All right, so we're gonna do this in two parts, and the reason we're doing this in two parts is that we're asking for, so the driver here is to approve the purchase of power transformers for the new substation. But we can't do that until we approve an increase to the 2023 budget, because we can't issue a contract if we don't have budget approved. And so there's two items here. One is for power distribution transformers, and the second one is for trucks. The trucks are a little more complicated, but in terms of the mechanics, but the dollar value is not as significant. So I'll walk you through the power distribution transformer piece first. Do you, Phil, Mr. Chair, do you want to do the motion and both?
Now, why don't you give us the discussion? and then
Background?
We
Okay,
can do the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So as you guys know, right, for those who've been around here, we've been, the RMLD's has had a need to build a new substation in Wilmington. Well, the need's been there for more than a decade. Earnest was efforts going back at least 8 years to do this. Last year, we ended up acquiring land. You need land to put a substation on. This is to support incremental load, but more importantly, it is to replace an existing substation number 5 that is located 165 Wildwood. That substation right now, substation 5, is end of life. We have been, and we continue to do extra maintenance, preventive maintenance, anticipatory maintenance on that system to keep it running, because if it were to fail, it would unplug a significant portion of Wilmington. And the replacement piece would be primarily transformers. And as you'll see here in a moment, they are not stock items that you can buy off the shelf. So that's the context behind behind the substation itself. In the 2023 budget, we had an item, the substation itself, but a component of that was $2.6 million for power supply transformers. Now, that budget had some small edits to it, but they weren't significant enough to reflect what's happening in the transformer market. At the end of the day, we actually did send out, because we had the budget, we sent out a bid program. We had 2 customers, 2 potential vendors supplied bids for these transformers. As you guys remember from last year and earlier this year, transformers are longer lead items and much more expensive. When we're talking substation transformer, in this case, 100 MVA, 115 to 34 or to 35 and 6 and 15 kV transformers. They're tailored, they're special made, like most substation transformers are, from transmission to distribution systems. These are as well. We had originally anticipated for the pair of them $2.6 million. We had 2 bids that came back. One bid came back at $5.8 million, and the other one came back at $7.1 million. 2.6 was the budget, 5.8, 7.1. These are massive numbers. We're going to get to the recommendation to choose the more expensive one because of 2 reasons. One is that the bid was a fixed price as opposed to a non-fixed price, and the delivery time was within our target to get the substation met, also half the time price. So the first point, the first request, the first thing we need to do is to ask for first the Citizens Advisory Board, which we did earlier, and then you for the Board of Commissioners, to increase the budget for the project. Now, this is a 3-year project, so this is $5 million over the 3 years. But this the majority, well, almost all this 5 million is going to go to the transformers themselves, so we can place the order for the transformers. That's the first step of the process, and then we'll come to the bid recognition. So the first request on the substation is to increase the project to $5 million. Now, the next question is, will that affect anything in 2023 from a cash flow perspective or a rate perspective? No. Will that have an impact in terms of what the budget looks like for 2024 and 25? Yes. And that will also have impacts in terms of rates. I don't expect it to have a significant impact on rates, but it's not, so key point, this is not a cash issue. This is a budget issue over several years. So that's the big picture. And then we'll go into the selection of the two. So the first requirement is to approve a change of budget.
Okay, so
Questions?
just to report on each of the two items here. The Citizen Advisory Board voted 3-0 on each of the items. So
Correct.
to recommend. So open up for questions and comments. Go ahead, Pam.
So, just, I'm not familiar with the financial statements yet.
Oh, yeah,
What is the capital budget every year, this in 2023?
24 million.
Okay.
Of which this would have been 2.6 of that 24 million.
And what was,
We tend
what were
not
the,
to spend, we'll be hard pressed to spend all 24 million, and we tend not to spend all because things get pushed out.
what,
So, sorry,
what was the assumption that got you to the original 2.6 million budget? Was there a previous transformer purchase or?
there were previous estimates. In reality, this probably goes back 3 years pre-COVID.
Okay.
The whole industry, let Mr. Coulter jump in a minute, but the entire industry is undergoing this issue. And
Yeah.
And the other element is there's another one of the other MLPs south of us, similar size, is doing a similar size set of another substation, and they have the same. I'm not sure what the original budget was, but the price of these transformers is market priced. Is what the market's. It's not. It's what the market's doing right now.
And since we're essentially suggesting we pay more for less time, is there a penalty if the supplier doesn't meet the 22 months?
We have to work. So the way the process works, so we will put that in place. So in this particular case, it is our money. Can't remember what meeting it was, but anyway, it is our money. There will be the performance requirements.
Just Pam, in the industry right now, you're basically buying factory space. They will not accept the performance requirement. You put in your bid for a transformer, and basically you get what you get when they have availability to build it. It's a very strange environment right now. You wish you got competitive bids. It's more you're buying access to a company to produce a product that you need. So it's very, very, very strange time. I wish it was competitive, but it doesn't seem to be that way right now.
Used to be.
But one thing, Greg, I know it's a cash problem, but dynamically, there's step changes about every 6 months. Is this the order in for this transformer? Like, is this the request for the transformer, or is this a budget increase request? Because of
2 steps, Bob. So I'm gonna and you don't have it in front of you, but in a moment, I'm gonna do a motion for us to accept an actual bid, and the bid is still valid. So it's a bid 7.1. Other two, it's a $7.1 million bid that we can execute.
Okay, because I was going to suggest
budgetary estimate's a real bid, and it's one of 2 that came through.
Okay.
We send out again, I think we sent out to a dozen different ones. Most of them are not responding because they're already booked out. So they don't necessarily, anyways, long story, but yeah, this is one of the 2. The first one was 5 point. So to answer your question, which is the second, it's a different motion because the first step we have to do is approve the budget increase before we approve the purchase. The approval of the contract.
my suggestion to the motion would be to increase that by, I would say make it $3 million. There's no need to come back to do this again. It's a budget. If you're below the budget, it's acceptable. but my suggestion would be to amend the motion to go to $3 million because you are dealing with substation transformers and the costs are huge. So, if
So,
they're gonna change
The
the
number
bid,
I have right now is 5 million.
okay,
And if, and I, again, it's a budget number. We can make it more than 5. 5 is fine for right now. But three
Okay.
would not be enough.
no, I said,
You
I
have-
was
you
gonna,
have it in front of you, so you can't see it, but
no, I don't. I'm sorry, but I was gonna say, you're asking for $2 million more. I would say ask for $3 million more.
so I'm actually asking for $5 million more. And you're
Okay, sorry.
ask for $8 million more budget wise.
Yeah, budget. I would increase that then by $1 million. My motion would be to increase that.
So 6 million instead of
6
5
million,
million.
okay.
Yeah,
that's-
that's correct.
I gotta spend it. I mean,
So,
that's a good recommendation.
Is your motion, Bob, that we amend, the motion has been made, but when the motion gets made, you put an amendment instead of additional 5 million, it'll be additional 8 million? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if it's 4 or 5, Phil, I cannot see it. I would say make it $6 million, please. Increase it by $1 million.
You're going to go to 6.
6 instead of 5.
So we need to go back to the cap to raise it another million.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
It shouldn't affect rates. It's just a motion for a budget. So,
I think she's right.
she's right.
Yep.
She
We
is
have,
right.
so,
She is right.
Bob,
Why don't we say, do what Bob said, subject to approval of the CAB at their next meeting?
he's putting, so I would need to place the order now.
Yeah.
So I think, so we have several $100,000 buffer in for this is just for the transformers. You're gonna see in the budget in October, a very different number for the whole rest of it, which will then have the broader discussion and what Bob is suggesting, put a buffer in place, we will do that. But let's let this run because this is a long lead item. Let's leave it at 5. I think Erica's a good prompt. And so, Bob, again, you can't see it in front of it, but the $5 million is not right to the number. It's so the bid we're going to ask them, or the order we're going to ask to place is $7.1 million. And if you approve a budget increase of $5 million as written, and on top of the 2.6, that basically gives us 7.6 million. So we have a little bit of buffer. I think that's okay for right now, if that's okay with you. But that keeps us moving. Time is of the essence, and we got a valid bid we want to execute. You follow?
no, I know because they'll change it on you within a 3 to 6 month window. They'll say it's not valid anymore.
Exactly right.
Even though yeah, exactly. Even though you put a bid in, you get it. You're gonna say, "What? It went up." So
Yeah.
it's,
All right. I think we want to
yep.
move now, and I think 5 is the right number for now. Sorry.
That's okay. But once we put that order in, it's a firm price
Correct. That's a
You're
firm
not-
price. That one's
right.
a firm price.
versus the other one was lower, but not firm and 4 years out.
Yeah, and it would escalate. We estimate it would be part of the reason why I put the 5 million is because if we ended up having discussion to go with that one, it would be closer to the 7.5 million, which is why I made it 7.6.
Are there other associated costs? With
Not on the, I mean, there are other ones tied to the
For the
project, but not for
procurement,
this order. Yeah, we should, it's a firm bid. We should be okay on this one. But we want to go now.
You want to read the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the CAB, approve an additional $5 million increase for power distribution transformers for the new Wilmington substation project, originally approved as Project 105, page 63, 64 of the calendar year 23 capital budget, on the recommendation of the general manager.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay, been moved, seconded. Further discussion? Now I'll call for a roll call. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Vita?
Aye.
Ms. Elastics?
Aye.
Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Did Bob agree? Do we get Bob? He said yes.
Bob.
Okay, Mr. Pacino, yes. Okay,
Oh, you can see them.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the
yeah, let's-
motion to do the bid?
yeah, no,
right
well, yeah, why don't we do that? That's not a bad idea.
That we can close
That's
this
not
one
a
off.
bad idea.
So I think you guys had a chance to read it. At the end of the day, there were 2 bids, two valid bids that came in. One for a fixed price from Virginia, 7.1 million, 7.115338, as written. The other one, that's in the package itself was for $5.8 million. It was over a 42-month period, which is 2 years later than we would like to get the substation built. Going back to, we're already, by the time we get it built, we'll be 10 years beyond where we want to be. And more importantly, it was not a firm price. It was firm for the first 12 months, but there was no delivery for the first 12 months. So it's not a firm price. So anyways, we thought that time and firmness of price was the better choice for us to go, which is why we recommend, like we're recommending the $7.1 million from Virginia Transformer Corporation. I can give more details, but that's the big picture.
Want to have the motion, then questions? Let's do the motion.
Do I have to read all the motions, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Okay. You.
Anybody else read a motion? Do we have a new director over here? The junior person.
Move that IFP 2023-14 for two 115-13.8 kilovolt power transformers be awarded to Virginia Transformer Corporation for $7,115,338 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 56D, on the recommendation of the General Manager.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Second. Okay. Further discussion? See none? Roll call vote. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Vita?
No, I'm sorry, I had a question.
You had a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so answer the question. please.
Okay, on the spare parts, how long are those intended to last for? The thing that's in the quote?
Oh.
Like, does
When-
that cover a year or 5 years or
Typically 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And we hold those in inventory, or those are just available?
We don't.
Okay.
And we can use them later, but we tend to do major, there's maintenance on the transformers themselves.
Mhm.
Typical cycle on something like this would be 10 years. We're doing stuff much faster on the current transformers that are over 4-year-old that are, so 10 years to answer your question.
And we feel like there's a couple really big differences between the spare parts costs, and we think that's reasonable. Right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, very good. Okay, now we'll go to the roll call. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Vita?
Aye.
Ms. Datsa-Laston?
Aye.
Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Ms. Pacino, aye. Okay, move on to the, we
Thank
move
you.
on
We'll
to the
place that
trucks.
over.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we going to discuss it first? Or
What?
Then I'll read it.
Yeah, why don't you read well, no, you got the motion on the, this motion comes first. This one.
The top one.
On-
I gotta do
that's
the
the
budget first.
This is the budget, okay? So why don't we get this, Greg, why don't you go first and then we'll get the motion?
Okay, little context here. So this is relative to rolling stock in the capital budget. And specifically, this is tied to material handler trucks. I'll go fast, really. We originally had, so there's a little bit of moving parts here. We're trying to minimize the budget impact. So in the 2023 budget that we approved, that you guys approved, that we presented, you approved, there's one material handler and one digger derrick truck. On the left-hand side, that top one is a material handler, and the bottom one is a digger derrick. The digger derrick is basically for planting, for drilling holes to set poles. The one above is there's a stock photo, but the interesting about that particular one, if you notice in the upper right-hand corner next to the bucket, there is a boom that's half retracted. It basically is a built-in winch adjacent to the bucket. Those two are not interchangeable in terms of equipment, but is interchangeable. That picture, which is the material handler, is somewhat interchangeable with what we call a high ranger, which is very similar. But in that case, there's no outrigger, there's no boom, there's no mechanism to create a second pair of hands. Instead, the bucket articulates or can spin around the boom. These are details you guys probably don't care about. Bottom line, there's two things happening here. One is that the line crews, we will always have high rangers and we'll always have material handlers. But right now, and we constantly replace trucks. So the request is, can we, instead of having the next truck replacement be a high ranger, they would like it to be a material handler. And again, the benefit of a high ranger the benefit of a material handler over a high ranger is it has a boom that's built into a short boom. They call it a jib boom, but it basically allows somebody in the bucket to have that jib boom hold a transformer when they're mounting a transformer overhead, hold lines when they're doing stuff. So it's basically an extra pair of hands. There are trade-offs, but at the end of the day, it works better for our crews. So our point is we want to buy the material handler instead of the high ranger, but we have no high ranger in the budget for 2023, but we do have a digger derrick. So what we want to do is not buy the digger derrick in 2023, but move that to 2024. By two, because, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the order cycle or the build cycle for these trucks, instead of being 6 to 8 months, is 18 months. So whatever we order now, we won't get till the end of next year. So we want to place the order now because we want that truck. So the second piece of it is that we intended to order the electric power takeoff. So that basically means that the boom would be operated by battery and electric motors, as opposed to hydraulics tied to the diesel engine, the main diesel engine. This is part of our electrification. It's also quieter, less emissions, etc. So the intention here is to have both of these, because we're going to start the process of transitioning to electric material handlers, but we're going to do it in 2 stages. The first stage is just the EPO, just the boom. You guys still with me? I'm so sorry. This is really cool stuff. Okay, so the request is to increase the budget by $250,000.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll stop. Any questions?
Yeah, if the PTO can't be electric, will it be a limiting factor on purchasing the vehicle?
Just say what I think I heard your question. Just say it one more time.
So if the PTO can't be electric, is that going to stop you from buying the truck?
I'm not. No.
Yeah.
What's
All right,
the
so long.
question?
Yeah, my video died.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Bob, can you hear me? It's Greg. What's the question behind the question? No, it won't. We're gonna. The lead time on the EPTO or the hydraulic boom is similar. So it doesn't change the lead time too much. It does increase the cost about $100,000 to do EPTO versus hydraulic. And again, these are the first 2 of 6, well, actually a total of 9 bucket trucks. Still with me, Bob? I really lost him.
You there, Bob?
So we'd budgeted $450 for an EPTO based material handler. The actual cost is closer to $490,000. So it's a 10. I mean, again, not to 10%. $40,000 is nothing, but that's not the question on the table. The question on the table is we want to move stuff around, but again, in order to place the order, we need to have the budget in place, and we don't have the budget in place because we'll spend $250,000 more net than we would have otherwise. If I'll
Motion, and then we can
Yeah.
say further discussion, and maybe he'll jump in
Why don't
by
you read the
then.
motion?
what's the time?
Okay,
Very tiny question on the wording in the motion, though.
Yeah,
It
please.
says additional $250,000 increase. So if we increased it before and we're increasing
Nope.
it again, or just a one
This
time
is
200?
we don't usually do this. Like I'm not sure if I've never done this.
Okay, it was just the additional and increase that just threw me off. I
Oh,
wasn't
both.
sure if it was,
Yeah. So
so it's
Uh,
fine, as long as
you can just
understand the interpretation.
whoever wants to read it can drop the word additional.
okay. Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Board, approve a $250,000 increase to purchase 2 materials handler trucks with electric drive PTO systems instead of 1 material handler truck and 1 digger derrick within the rolling stock replacement program, originally approved as Project 118, pages 27 and 28 of the calendar year 23 capital budget, upon the recommendation of the general manager.
Okay, is that seconded? Been seconded? Okay, Bob, do you have any got any comments or questions? We're not sure we got your questions answered.
Yeah, this meeting's going on so long, my earbuds died. So, yeah, but it's, no, what it was I don't care if it's electric PTO or hydraulic PTO, buy the truck, right? Is that a limiting factor on purchasing the vehicle?
No, it doesn't change the delivery time.
Okay,
Okay,
that's all. Thank you.
Basically,
All right.
get it
okay,
done.
very good. So any further discussion? I'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Beta?
Aye.
Ms. Gastelassi?
Aye.
And Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Mr. Pacino, aye. Okay, that motion carries.
I did.
Yeah, Pam, second.
I get the motion,
So let's move on to the procurement on the truck, the first one.
please.
Okay, go ahead. You want to read the
Yep,
motion?
move that proposal IFP 2023-34 for 2 material handler trucks with electric drive PTO system be awarded to James A. Kiley Company for $992,158 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 56D on the recommendation of the general manager.
Is that seconded? Seconded?
Can I just ask, I know we asked questions already. How many bids did we get on this?
Only one on this one.
Just this one?
Yeah, and Kylie, we work with Kylie a lot, but again, this is. People have more business than they know what to do with.
If only we had some,
How many no bids?
4
how many, what bids?
No
no
bids.
bids.
Meaning,
Like, how many people did you ask? that
Didn't respond.
Said, no, we're not.
oh, I see.
Or, but they don't.
If only we had some procurement experience on this board, you know?
What a setup. Next question.
Okay, is further discussion on that? Seeing none, roll call vote again, Mr. Talbot?
Aye.
Ms. Beta?
Aye.
Yes, Lassie?
Aye.
Mr. Coulter?
Aye.
Ms. Pacino, aye. Okay. That's because,
Last one,
Yep.
okay, move that IFP 2023-35 for 750 MCM 15 kilovolt power cable be awarded to Arthur J. Harley Company Incorporated for $255,717 pursuant to MGL Chapter 164, Section 5060 on the recommendation of the general manager.
This one's regular. In budget, 4 bids. We rejected 2 for different reasons. But it's a pretty straightforward, it's expensive, don't get me wrong. With cables, cable hasn't got to be quite as crazy as transformers have. Which is why we put into the budget. 2/3 of it basically is going on to 2 different projects, and then the other one's going into stock. It's cable we use on a regular basis, so we're just trying to buy a little bit ahead. There's no magic on this one.
all right, just for information purposes, I'm going to abstain on this because Arthur J. Hurley is a client of a client.
Oh, right.
And puts a nickel in
Nickel
my
in your
pocket,
pocket.
nickel in my
Right,
pocket. Okay, further Pam,
motion.
Oh,
Oh, you
Second.
did.
yeah, Pam second, okay. All right, further discussion?
It's just, I have the same question, man. How many bids? 4 bids. Okay. I mean, a lot of our work goes to this one company, and I don't know why that is. I don't know. It just seems like,
I'm not, again, I haven't looked at that from that perspective.
Yeah.
But I haven't done the analysis in terms of one.
They're one of the big local players.
Yep.
Just FYI.
no,
Curly.
I
Yep, it's they supply it, they can get it, they're reasonably priced, in the market, so.
On that note, what was their price compared to others? Were they lowest, middle, highest?
They happen to be the lowest of the 3 qualified, and they were slightly higher than the one that didn't qualify. So they're $255,000 versus 277, 256, 265, and then the one low bidder was 242.
Yeah, there is a
they're in
chart,
the
there is a
pretty wide
part of the package.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you go further on, you can see
Yeah.
that the bids are there each time.
We'll get.
what is it that makes somebody not be qualified to sell us cabling?
So I think in this
Keep going.
just sells cable.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
Conditions
this is, right?
of the order. Price escalations. It was,
There you
so
go.
in this particular one for West Coast CME, I don't have, engineering didn't accept, I don't know what the exception, engineering didn't accept it, so it's some technical issue. And it was not Okanite cable. 3 of the bids were Okanite cable and the 2 of them were CME. And in fact, both CME cables didn't qualify. So to answer your question,
Okay.
technical merits.
Different kind of care.
Yeah, different
Okay.
cables. They didn't meet our
That-
qualification.
I get it.
The other three bids that were all qualified were Okanite. Different prices and reasonably so. This was the lowest of those three.
Got it.
This one, I think this one's clean.
Okay. Ready for the vote?
Unlike the ones last month. Just joking. That was another,
Yeah.
another very, very bad joke. Sorry, I'm gonna stop now.
I tell you, we're gonna get the transformer manufacturing business.
Yeah.
Move it on. Mr. Talbot?
So did you read it yet?
Oh, yeah.
And it was seconded.
Yeah, it's been moved to second.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Vita?
Aye.
And Mr. Colton?
Aye.
And Ms. Pacino, aye. All right, we're up to personnel report. There you go.
Great.
Wait, Bill, sorry, are you buying that or you?
What? Oh, I abstained, excuse me. It's getting late. What can I say?
It's coming. Yeah. So since the last time I met you all, I think I was here for 6 weeks. So now it's been 7 months. So I want to talk to you about what has gone on in the HR department over the last 7 months. So we're going to talk about the last 6 months, the HRIS, Human Resource Information System, and then the goals of the HR department. So starting up the last 6 months, talking about wellness and engagement. We have re-kicked off our wellness committee. So we meet on a monthly basis, trying to do healthy things for the organization, for our employees. We added an amenity discount program where employees can get discounts on things such as movie tickets, really clothing, anything that you can think of. And you can take it on your phone when you're traveling, especially in the summer. You can put in your zip code and it will pop up everything that's around you. So it's a pretty nice program. We added a Fetch Pet Insurance. This is 100% employee funded, but they do get a discount because we are an organization that we sign up for. And I think we've had like 5 people sign up for it so far. And then our people and culture and partnership with Maya. We've done some exercise classes. They came in and did a back class of Got Your Back, of how to make sure you aren't hurting your back when you're lifting things or sitting at your desk all day long. And then just the people and culture, we had a Red Sox opening day. And the latest one was a summer soiree kickoff celebrating our 7th year of getting a reliability award. So we're focusing on the employees. For the education, we have a tuition reimbursement program that people are taking advantage of. We have someone are getting a bachelor's, someone in associates, and someone else getting their MBA. So that is exciting. So I hope to see that trend continue as other people take advantage of tuition reimbursement. Light Learnings have been rolled out by Julie Blackley in the communication department. This is where once a month the department highlights what's going on in their department so everyone knows what's going on in metering or an IRD, accounting, and so forth. We built out SharePoint so employees have a one-stop shop to find anything that they're looking for, a phone list, a enrollment form, open positions, a CBA, really anything that they're looking for, they can find it on the SharePoint. Our general safety committee combined with our electrical safety because we're finding that there was a lot of overlap. So to save time, we had that just combined it into one committee and it's worked out extremely well. We've had 2 or 3 meetings and it's gone very good. Bill in the IRD and his cohorts of co-ops and interns have gone on some field trips. We went to Stony Brook Energy Center and they went to Bloom Energy last week so they can see what's going on in the fields. And then Day in a Line kicked off last week where people go out in the line department. Erin was one of those people. And they spent an hour or 2 in the field with the line. They wear the hard hats as Lydia has on, safety goggles, and they just watch what the line workers are doing and they explain what they're doing in safety and so forth. So a lot of good stuff going on in education. I went to the SHRM conference. That's just my obligatory picture. And these are the themes that they talked about for the 4 days that I was there. I heard empowerment, confidence, trust, accountability, your authentic self, hire for skills, not just for a diploma. Make sure your employees are engaged. Former President Bill Clinton was a speaker and he was phenomenal. All the other keynote speakers said these same words. So these are things that we're bringing back to RMLD to sort of bake into our culture and to become more employee centric and give these people confidence, empowerment to own their career and to advance.
Sorry, who was the guest speaker?
Former President Bill Clinton. He was great.
What do you got paid for that speech?
I know. Well, it was 45 minutes and his hand was shaking. I'm like, please don't drop the microphone. He did a good job.
So we gave him a few RMLD's dollars. So,
Okay, keep going.
good.
So we've collaborated with many local colleges over the last 6 months. We put together an intern in a co-op program, as well as some students on STEM or F1 visas. So right now we have 6 interns, 2 co-ops, and 3 STEM OPT visa students. We have partnered with WPI, Augusta Polytechnic Institution, Merrimack, Northeastern, UMass, HALT, Endicott. So we have a great relationship with these colleges. We'll continue this program into 2024 and having the co-ops and interns join us again.
I'm curious, the Mass Maritime, I thought that was like ocean going. Yeah.
They're engineering as well. We have 2 dynamite females that came from Mass Maritime. One was hired as a full-time engineer, and the other one is a intern, and she's doing a phenomenal job.
Good.
What are their names? I'm gonna write them down right
Oh,
now.
One of the names is on this slide here. The last 6 months are interns and co-op.
Can't see it.
I'm not going to read it. Ryan is from Merrimack. He's working on heat pump mapping from the rebate data. Aiden is from WPI. He's mapping EVs based on EV charge rebates and excise tax data. Caleb is a return intern from Colby. He's evaluating the Shed the Peak program and also evaluating renewable choice program. And Molly O'Keefe, WPI, Mass Maritime. She is evaluating geothermal resource and territory. And there was a meeting yesterday with one of the companies that Bill and his team had to see if it was a possibility for us to do. So that's exciting.
This is the low temperature geothermal stuff, so we're trying to get some meat behind it.
Good.
Good work.
We have done heavy recruiting over the last 6 months. I think when I started, there was 74 employees. We're now up to 94, but 10 of those are those interns and co-ops. We've had a lot of internal transfers, which I love seeing. We had our general line foreman just promoted from the assistant, and we had a lead lineman promoted to the assistant general line foreman. And then we had just first class promoted to the leader lineman. So it's fantastic. We also had a boomerang. We had someone that was here, then left, and then came back. So that is great. As well as recruiting to talk about the open positions. We are actively recruiting for the Director of Engineering and Director of Operations to replace Hamid Jafari that was with us. We also have an IRG engineer and analyst, and we have a staff accountant that we're looking for in AMI Tech. So some human capital metrics that we have are workforce by generation. Our baby boomers are 24 strong. Gen X is our heaviest with 28. Millennials have 27 employees and Gen Z 15, and those are all of our interns. And co-ops, that's Gen Z. So coming in strong. Just a little DEI chart. The female population is 20%, male population is 71%. Not surprising, it is a male-dominated industry, but we are actively recruiting, hopefully to get some female line workers and engineers back in here.
Do you have any female line workers?
None. They're hard to come by.
The female engineers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That portfolio has changed quite a bit over the past several years.
All right. Here's our headcount by department. Not surprising, line is the biggest, but then you see the pink, and that's IRD. They've grown since July 22 to July 23. That again is because we have a very
I opened a Salesforce on my thing, and that's what it did. I don't know what it was.
we have a very robust intern and co-op program. That's why we see the headcount in IRG grew so much. Here's our turnover. We've had 4 people leave within since January. And one in every department. So it's not just in line department. There's one EEO, there's IRD, grid asset and in accounting. And we do have another retirement coming up, Kathleen Ryback.
Yep.
She'll be July, so she'll be on the next, or she'll be at some point this month.
She's.
Yeah.
This week.
Well,
Do you do exit interviews with folks who leave voluntarily?
If they leave voluntarily, we do. If there's not, then no.
Any like general feedback on, I mean, it's not.
No,
Right,
the
but-
ones that have left were retirements.
Oh, okay.
People like to stay here.
They do.
You don't do a exit interview on a termination? I know it's sometimes
if
it's not happy, but
Termination, no, I do not.
okay.
Our tenure, we have 49 employees within their first 5 years. We have 33 within their first year, which is incredible. And then we go all the way down to the bottom, 30 plus years, we have 4 people in that category. 85.
Got me in there too.
Who wants to be number 5?
And then we recently, or we're currently implementing an HRIS system, human resource information system, and we are putting in Zenefits. We looked at some of the bigger players. They were just too big for us right now, maybe someday. But Zenefits really fit the bill. And it's exciting that we're doing this because this is one of my goals to sort of streamline and use technology to be more efficient with time. So right now, a lot of these things that you see on the screen, recruiting, performance management, and things like that are done paper with Excel spreadsheets. It's very labor intensive. There's 5 versions of something. You're like, which one am I using? The biggest thing that I love is that there's one system of record. So we'll be able to go in and pull reports, do custom reports. We can look at our analytics. Where's our turnover? Who are we hiring? When are people retiring? And things like that. So it's exciting that we have this in, and I've been working with Zenefits to really get this up and running and hopefully roll it out to employees within the next 2 to 3 weeks, get them to log on, get them comfortable with it, hold some lunch and learns if some people might be a little nervous going in, and so forth. And this is the snapshot of what the dashboard looks like. So it's a nice little system. And then the HR goals for the rest of 2023 is to leverage HR technology and automation to increase HR efficiency. That is the Zenefits implementation. Create a culture of accountability. We are revamping performance reviews. Those will be online, as well as creating or revising KPIs for all positions. Develop effective and future-ready leaders. Again, that education and training, but we're also looking to get a learning management system or an LMS that will connect or have a connection to our HRIS system where we can build curriculum for employees to get them their soft skills, or if they want to move into a different department or just advance where they are, they'll be able to get the training here on site. And then adopt a people-first approach and focus on employee well-being, ongoing one-on-ones. Management are committed to those with their staff. Lunch with the GM is a hot ticket in town. It's once a quarter, and they get to have lunch with Greg. We're also going to do another engagement survey, and we're looking at doing a buddy program. So when new hires come in, they are partnered with someone, so they have someone to go to for their questions and they don't feel awkward asking questions. That's it.
Okay.
Any questions?
There was a highly successful survey by the employees when Greg was new because participation was almost 100%. Are you doing anything like that?
That's the engagement.
That's the engagement survey. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any comments, questions? If not, then Greg, you're next.
Okay, I'll kind of wrap it up. A couple of key items. So again, I'm going to continue to be more diligent to between meetings, give you guys more details. I forwarded it to you this morning. You'll see it in your inbox at some point in time. What's there now? Won't hit everything. On the personnel stuff, that remains HR personnel related. It remains high priority. As you just gathered from Sarah, we're doing a particularly good job. Morale is good. There's a lot of energy in the organization, so that remains important. From a strategy perspective, business perspective, we'll probably do a strategy session here either September or October, but the themes remain consistent. One is, the charter is reliable, low cost, non-carbon, right? Reliable, low cost, non-carbon. That framework is getting drilled into everybody in this organization, including the line team. Reliability first and foremost, as we talked about already. But that in that context, within territory generation and storage. So you'll see a few things. I'll talk briefly about a couple of things that we're working on right now. And then the other key piece is data analytics. So the data analytics, there's a lot of work with some of the STEM, the more experienced individuals, more educated individuals that are working in Bill's group in terms of forecasting load forecast as well as power supply forecast. Historically, we used to do those on monthly and annual basis. We're now moving down to doing those on hourly basis, given the nature of what the supply looks like, as we've talked about before, right? It's, solar and hydro and wind, et cetera. Those are all hourly generators, are not block generators. So there's a lot of work. The key thing is data analytics. Sarah mentioned KPIs. Those will also be driven by analytics as well. So analytics are not just an IRD function. They'll go into the line crews, the technical crews, et cetera. So data, and you'll start seeing, you get the regular traditional financials. You'll get to know those, but one of the things that Ben is working on is dashboards, not only for us internally, but also things that we can share with you. So a little bit higher, kind of snapshot. We are focused very specifically on managing cash. We're in a very good cash position. Currently our only source of revenue is ratepayer money. So we manage it very carefully. We'll provide updates as soon as they come available in terms of the grant applications. There's over $40 million of grant applications that we're going to hear about in the next few months. We're optimistic, but again, we're being aggressive on that and pursuing others. In terms of a couple of key projects, one is a Highland bus project that we're driving out of IRD. The idea behind that is there's several different pieces of that. One key is to create another PR, but another example of for the local bus companies that are serving our 4 different towns, the ability and our encouragement for them to do electric buses. We like it for 2 reasons. One, it's increased load, but the second piece is it will provide a storage mechanism for peak management. And so we're in the process right now. We will end up having a bi-directional DC fast charger, keyword being bi-directional, so that software is already in place with this particular project in the Highland bus, where we can discharge it during peak hours. It'll just, for the rest of the summer, it'll be one small bus. So it's not going to move the needle in terms of dollars, but it will in terms of technology. The engineering guys are working on the implementation of it. Bill and his group is working on the rates tied to it as well. So that's coming down the road. The other key piece that I'll mention as I wrap up, back to within territory generation, it requires land. You guys have heard me talk before about the landfill project in Wilmington, Maple Meadows. It continues to have legs. It is where we are continuing to push forward on that one. We are hoping to be in a position to do land acquisition in the September-October timeframe. We are working with Mass Department of Environmental Protection, DEP. They remain supportive, but as we get deeper into it, there's some requirements that they are going to have that will probably push the acquisition into later this year or early next year. There'll be some recommendations that I'll provide to you guys probably in the September timeframe, October timeframe, in terms of what the entity structure that would do the acquisition of the land. Part of the goal there is to make sure that we provide liability protection for RMLD and the associated towns that we serve. More details there. So there's a lot of pieces that are on this that are tied to this. The core goal is to have more generation and storage within our territory. So somewhere between 5 and 10 megawatts of solar that will that'll have a lower cost of energy. It'll increase the reliability, and of course, in this case, this particular one will be solar. It'll also be non-carbon, so it'll check all 3 boxes: reliable, low cost, non-carbon. So that continues to move forward. It will be another mechanism in terms of us pursuing funding tied to the landfill cleanup portion of it through the state. That'll be, we're so our focus from RMLD perspective is the generation assets itself. We'll end up acquiring the land, but anyways, when we finalize it, it will be it'll be a good purchase price. It'll be fair to all parties concerned, all said and done. But the cleanup piece, we would like parties that were actually involved in it to actually pick up that tab through the state. So there's some mechanisms that work on to make that happen. All at the end of the day, Maple Meadows continues to move forward. We were hoping it was one of the places that one of the storage systems might go in 2024. That still might be the case. Again, not to get too far down the road. And in 25, realistically, probably 26 is when the solar would ultimately be commissioned if everything comes together. So a lot of work on that one. In addition, as you guys saw, we're trying to do smaller scale solar projects in each of the towns on municipal buildings. That'll be a transition where RMLD will actually own the generation assets. This goes back to the discussion we had earlier, storage, energy services agreement, generation assets, own them. There's a whole bunch of benefits for us to own assets, all sorts of stuff, which we'll walk you through as well. So big picture, from a personnel perspective, from a technology perspective, from data analytics and within territory generation and financing, a lot of stuff going on. The team's working very hard. I think we're pointed for the most part together and in the right direction. No, when I say for the most part, there's nothing behind that comment other than positiveness, but we've got a lot to do in a short period of time. We talked about in the other meeting, and we talked about a little bit here. We do look at the wholesale market being increasingly expensive, increasingly volatile, and increasingly fragile. So that's part of the reason why we're trying to be more, not self-sufficient, but more within territory generation and more control of it. So it all ties together to a core strategy. Any questions?
You mentioned you were out in the other meeting, you're gonna add some charging stations here.
We'll add one, the bi-directional DC. Oh, two, I should say two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're halfway. So we have two public charging stations here. I will make sure Bill is actually, if you would have Maria, so I need to do this anyways, but she should just distribute the quarterly charging utilization report. The charging stations out here are in the daytime 100, not quite 100, 90% utilized. And so we're now as employees, there are four of us that have electric vehicles. And so there's 4 ports, we use the ports. But there are several customers that also come here. We're paying customers, they're paying customers. So anyways, we're adding another level 2 charger. It was configured to be able to handle this. So that orange cone you see out there, and then within the next month, it'll have another charger on it. So we'll have 6 ports. And then we'll also put out in front, going back to the Highland Bus project, bi-directional DC fast charger. And the DC fast charger in the library is due in the September timeframe. So a year later, it'll get installed up there as well. And then we have some additional chargers that we need to that we are working through some site license paperwork with the town of Linfield and the town of North Reading to add some chargers of both of those. So at that point, all 4 towns will have at least a pair of chargers. So lots percolating. Other questions? We're having fun. I know it's late in the evening, but we're still energized. Pun intended. Get a jib boom on the material handle. Yeah.
We have no further comments. I'll entertain.
You should do a day in a life, right?
I know that would be fun.
Yeah. Every other Wednesday.
Yeah, you're just trying to read the date.
Yeah, we're not gonna do. So
Right,
our
I'm
next,
sure Bob is still on because we're.
yeah, our next meeting is scheduled for September the 28th. That's when our next meeting is going to be. Then we have the October 19th. After that, then November and December.
Yeah. I can't do Thursdays.
Did they decide they're gonna?
Oh,
do it
Thursdays you can't do. Okay,
I can't do Thursdays, yeah.
Thursday, so what are we doing on the?
With our schedule, because we have a lot of staff away, for 1 week, and then I think we had proposed the 28th, and the cab said they could do that. Have to meet before we do. So it's kind of up to you guys September, and then for the next one, we can always circle back and
we go to Wednesdays after. Bob, can you make the September Thursday work on the 28th, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, I can do that.
Just
Yep.
So we'll work
Let's
that.
leave September
I can do that. Yep.
We'll shift over going forward to Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Who's scheduled to cover on the CAB for that meeting? You do?
Come early,
Okay.
28th.
Good. And in the rotation to sign the warrants,
Not yet.
sign the warrant, okay? So when is John's next time up? When is he up? next?
Sorry, but actually, because we redid it, we didn't have October, but September, Marlena, you're covering that.
Okay.
And after that, we have to fill in October. And then we have November, so I can put Pam in and send it out as like a draft and see what you guys think.
Okay,
We ended up moving the rotation ahead until we filled it.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and take a look at that and we
Okay.
can take care of it early next week.
so Pam, we usually have to go through the bills and sign it.
Okay.
So and I've always found it when I first on the board, a great learning experience.
Okay.
To see where everything is being spent. Yeah, so if you have questions, if you got questions, you can contact me anytime.
And contact him with mechanics here and then
Yeah. It's all done electronically. They send it to you to sign it, to be signed electronically.
Okay.
Okay. All right. See now, so,
Are the meetings in person in Littleton or online?
they're definitely in person and I think they're still trying to do hybrid.
Yeah.
all right.
One last small request. So one of the other things, again, in the interest of speed, we're trying to get a meter data management project, which is in the budget, approved to purchase. It's about $250,000 out of a $280,000 budget. We would like to, there's a potential that in mid August that we would like to request a very short Zoom meeting to get that approved. It would be a purchase approval. I'm not 100% sure it's going to come together, but we're trying to get it done. So I will ask your help in terms of allowing for a 20-minute Zoom call sometime in mid-August, potentially.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Move that the Board of Commissioners adjourn regular session.
Okay, is that second? We move second. Roll call vote, Mr. Talbot.
Aye.
Ms. Vita.
Aye.
Dr. Lawson. Mr. Coulter.
Aye.
Aye. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Oh,
you
your
so
first
much.
meeting. Great.
Thanks.